know that this month is Aboriginal month, as well as on June 21st, it's Indigenous Peoples Day, to celebrate First Nations people, Inuit, and the Métis. For Indigenous Month, I wanted to share some First Nations things with you today. As some of you may know that I have a First Nations background, and my tribe is called the Mi'kmaq tribe. So today I'm going to share with you a traditional recipe, as well as some sacred items, and as well as show you a smudging ceremony at the very end. Alright? Stay tuned. First, let me tell you a little bit about the Mi'kmaq people. So the Mi'kmaq people were the original inhabitants of the province of Nova Scotia, dating back 13,000 years after the last ice age. So today, a lot of the Mi'kmaq people occupy and enjoy the Atlantic provinces. Located right here on the east coast of Canada. Do you know what provinces make up the Atlantic region? Mi'kmaq people lived close to waterways, as their main source of travel was the birch bark canoe. The natural environment provided everything they needed, and they depended on their knowledge of the seasons, weather, animals, plants, hunting, and preparation skills for survival. Just as other cultures around Canada and the world have their own traditions, music, food, and stories, so do the Mi'kmaq. Beautiful crafts are still produced using materials from the natural environment. Here I have a Mi'kmaq quill box created by my grandma. So Mi'kmaq people specialized in this ancient art of porcupine quills on birch bark. A lot of Europeans fought after these porcupine boxes. What traditions does your family or culture have? I will also show you my hand drum that I made. In Mi'kmaq culture, the drum is more than a musical instrument. It has a life and a spirit. I made this drum from wood and animal hide. Before I can play this drum, it has to go through a birthing ceremony, which is the process of connecting to the animal and tree, spirits, and singing the hide into place. Every drum has its own voice and power. The sounds of the drum are a calling to align all hearts that hear its voice. The drum beat is the earth's heartbeat, held in your hands, drum and drumstick. When do you think the drum might be played in the Mi'kmaq community? Mi'kmaq people were fishers, hunters, and gatherers. The most important animal hunted by the Mi'kmaq was the moose, which was used in every part. The meat for food, the skin for clothing, tendons and sinew for cordage, and bones for carving and tools. Other animals hunted, trapped included deer, caribou, bear, rabbit, beaver, porcupine, and small animals. They ate fish of all kinds, such as salmon, sturgeon, lobster, squid, shellfish, and eels, as well as seabirds and their eggs. They hunted marine mammals, porpoises, whales, walrus, and seals. I mentioned hunters, fishers, and gatherers. What do you think I mean when I say gatherers? Today I'm going to prepare a traditional First Nations recipe with you. And in my tribe, we call it Luskinian. A lot of other tribes and a lot of other people refer to it as bannock. You might have heard of it or even tried it. Today we're going to show you how to make it in two different ways. Traditionally, using a stick over the fire and in a cast iron skillet. So today we're doing it over at a fire, but you can also make this at home in the oven or on the stove top. Luskinian can also be translated to 4-cent bread because it's really, really cheap to make. We also call it for short Luski. So here we go. I have a bowl of flour. To this flour, I'm going to add some sugar. Just your plain old white sugar. Baking powder, not to be mixed up with baking soda. Completely different things. Gotta be baking powder. Every recipe calls for salt. A little bit of salt. And here I have oil. Today we're using just a vegetable oil. Traditionally though, First Nations people would use whatever they had on hand. So if they were cooking in Mi'kmaq culture, moose is actually the most important animal to the Mi'kmaq culture, they would use the fat from the moose or what other animal they caught, whether it was seal. They used a lot of seal because they're in the Atlantic provinces. If you're going camping and cooking up some bacon fat in this recipe is the best. I highly recommend it. So you can use any kind of oil. And the last ingredient is water. So it's really a simple ingredient. I've mixed all this in a bowl. The water you want to add in slowly, depending on the humidity outside or the ingredients that you're using. It might not use all the water. So it's really important for the consistency that you want, especially if you're going to be cooking it using a stick, to slowly and gradually add the flour, or the water, sorry. So I'm going to grab my water and just add a little bit at a time. We're going to mix this up. We're looking for a nice soft dough consistency. You can see it's somewhat coming together, but it's still dry, so we need a little bit more. If you happen to put too much water in, easy fix. All you have to do is add more of your dry ingredients. What I like doing when I go camping is having a big Ziploc bag of all my ingredients, my dry ingredients already. So the flour, the baking powder, the salt, and the sugar mixed in a Ziploc bag. That way when you get to the campsite, all you have to do is add your water. So you can see that it has started to come together into a dough-like consistency. So this is when I'm going to strap the spoon and get my hand in there. So once you have a good consistency, it shouldn't be too wet. It should be dry to the touch, but not crumbly. It's almost like a Play-Doh. Every kid likes to play with Play-Doh. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take part of this, and we're going to do it a traditional way of cooking it on a stick. And get out of the smoke. So what we want to do is flatten this out to get it as flat as possible. If it's really, really thick, when it's cooking around the stick, you're going to find that you get crispy on the outside, but then not quite cooked in the inside yet. Take our stick, start at the top, and we wrap it around. And this, we're going to hold over the fire. So we have the traditional way of cooking bannock on the stick going on right over on the fire right now. The other way to do it is in a cast iron pan. So this can be done over a fire, on the stove top, or even in your oven. So I'm going to grab the rest of my dough, stick it in my pan, and just give it a little flatten out. Just like that. Because it's a cast iron pan, you shouldn't need any oil or grease at the bottom. It shouldn't stick. A lot of the cast iron pans are already pre-seasoned. So we're going to put this over the fire. Today I have this great little grate that I carry camping all the time. We're going to put it on. Just a reminder, kids, that when you are around the fire, make sure you have an adult supervision with this. Let your parent or guardian do all the handling with grabbing things out of the fire. I have a fire safety glove that I'm going to be using. There we go. So when your bannock is cooking on the stick, it's kind of like cooking a marshmallow. You always want to cook side and then rotate it around. You can see that this bread is getting a nice golden color, which is perfect. That's what we want. After you've had it on for a few minutes, you can skip it. And by skip it, I mean flip it. But it gets a nice golden color. Back on it goes for the other side. This one, you can see the beautiful golden color on here. This is ready. So you can eat this with a little bit of butter, your favorite jam, traditional molasses, or a lot of people's favorite, maple syrup. I'm gonna give this a try. You gotta try this. Wonderful. In a little bit, I'm going to be showing you a traditional smudge ceremony. So a smudging ceremony is when we use smoke from one of our 4 sacred medicines to purify and cleanse your soul, release any impurities or any negative energy. Smudging ceremonies cleanse hearts and thoughts and open minds to accept and respect diversity and change. The Mi'kmaq never considered themselves superior to other life forms, since people, animals, trees, flowers, grass, mountains, the sun, the moon, the oceans, everything in the universe was believed to be created equal. The Mi'kmaq also believed in the interconnectedness of everything in the universe and beyond. This resulted in a tremendous respect for everything in nature. So during your smudge, you're going to light your sacred medicine with fire. You can't use any lighters. It has to be done with a match or from a stick from the fire. So you can never use any kind of lighter for a smudge ceremony. The smoke that it comes out is what's actually going to cleanse your soul. And to do this, we waft the smoke using eagle feathers, there's other types of feathers as well, but the eagle feather is the most traditional. An eagle feather is one of the greatest gifts you can get from an elder. So an eagle feather is something that the First Nations people think very highly of. It's one of the most sacred things. I was actually at a powwow one year, and one of the dancers lost its feathers from its regalia, And the whole ceremony had to stop, and the elders had to come out and do a feather pickup ceremony. So it just goes to show you how important these feathers are. So you can do a smudge in a few different ways. One way is in a shell bowl. So I have a shell with some sage leaves in the bowl. You can also get smudge sticks like this one. Do you think of any ceremonies that we would do a smudge for? What do you think? Walalio. Thank you, giver of life, for the life that was brought here before us. Thank you, Mother Earth, for providing us with the necessities of life, from the plants, birds, fish, and the animals that we obtain our food, medicine, our clothing, our shelter, our tools of survival. We are grateful for Mother Earth and grateful for the East, the direction of the sunrise and new beginnings. Each new sunrise brings us new light and new opportunities to grow and live. Grateful to the South. We ask the grandmothers of the South to bring us the warm winds of compassion, to melt the ice that can gather around our hearts, dissolve our fears, melt our hatreds, and kindle our love into flames. I'm grateful to the West, the direction of the setting sun. I proudly acknowledge our ancestors who have gone before us and ask for their guidance so we can live our lives as we should. I am grateful for the North and our mothers who teach us to get along with one another, to love one another, because we are one large family of humanity. We must care for one another and take care of each other. Finally, we look within and acknowledge and honor our own spirits. We often don't consider ourselves to be of value or to be important, but we are. We are an essential part of life. We are life in action, loving, moving, and growing.